with you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Iggy. Very, very happy to be here with you all the way from Southfield, Michigan in the USA. I think I'm in the same neck of the woods as Roxana. Roughly, we're both in the Eastern time zone. So it's very, very early here. And I have to make sure I have all my headset on because my wife is asleep in the other room. But we talk about emotional intelligence. But at any rate, I'm going to go ahead and dive in today. Again, thank you very much for having me there. I'm so excited and happy to be here. I always love sharing with the folks from South Africa. I love sharing, period, but I have a special place in my heart for folks in South Africa. So I think that was the first folks that reached out to me ever to speak on an international level were from South Africa, and that's why that special place is there. But today, we're going to talk to you about the need for emotional intelligence in UX. And so we'll explain what that is, why it's important, and things of that nature as we go here. A little bit about me. For some of you that don't know me, I've been working in the UX and HCI world now since 1995, so roughly 26 plus years there. I have a master's, a UX-related master's degree from Syracuse University, UX-related master's degree from Kent State University, where I also teach. You see the World Usability Day logo, which is going on, I believe, today. I think it is, or was yesterday, in a lot of places around the world. But that's there to indicate that I do speak quite frequently. I appear on a lot of shows. I speak at a lot of conferences, and it just keeps increasing and increasing and increasing. But I just love doing it. A lot of people speak. Some of you who already know me know that I don't pull punches. A lot of people speak because they just like being able to speak. I like speaking because I feel an indebtedness to the discipline. The discipline's been good to me. I love to give back. And so I speak a lot, but I think I have a lot to share. I have a lot to say, and I really care about the direction and the health of the discipline as a whole. You see a picture of my lovely wife, who's again in the other room sleeping there, my wife Angela there, with picture of one of our cats. We love cats. That's Rocky as a picture, talk about photography. One of the photos that appeared in the local Humane Society calendar, picture of one of my favorite cameras there. And I love bicycling. I lost 100 pounds a few years ago, and bicycling was a huge part of that. And so bicycling is very important to me, and I absolutely love bowling. That's one of my favorite pastimes. I'm also a former professional bowler, and that's a screenshot of my first sanctioned 300 game there, just to help to illustrate the bowling. But that's me in a nutshell, and I think it's important for you to see the personal side and not just the professional side, so it sort of humanizes what we're doing just a tad bit to help you to understand who I am at the personal level. So let's go ahead and get into the content. So UX, if we were doing this live in person, I would ask people to share. What do you think about UX? What comes to mind when you think about UX? What do you think the discipline is about? And I have talked to people all over the world, and I get insights from people with regard to what their sentiments are when it comes to this question. And a lot of times when you talk to people about UX, it's usually about the work itself, not the defining UX, but what it is, what types of things do we actually do? What's important to us? What helps us to get our work done? What helps us to bring value? Wireframes comes to mind. Design sprints, a hot topic today, and I'm not going to get into the pros and the cons or anything. Just trying to shape our mindsets here to help us to level set to where we are, because that I get tempted to talk about design sprints, but I'm not going to do it. Not today. People talk about journey mapping. This is becoming increasingly popular and necessary in UX. Heat maps, eye tracking. These are things that a lot of us get into. Some of us wish we could. I wish I could get into it more. We don't always have the opportunity, but it's a big UX component. Personas, not necessarily the best example of personas here, but this is something that comes up for us. This is something that many of us need to do, something many of us want to learn more about, but it's part of what happens when you think of UX. Personas, one of the things that comes to mind. Information architecture and content strategy. This is, some people would say this is a sitemap, a little bit more than a sitemap if you look closely, but information architecture, which is something a lot of people don't get to learn about, really, really critical and part of the backbone of UX. And so those who don't get to learn or about information architecture, don't get involved a lot, just might want to put this on your list of things to do, things to deep dive. Prototyping. And there is no shortage of tools available for prototyping. So, but again, when you think of UX, it's something that comes to mind. Usability testing, especially for those of us that love research, we definitely can't get away from usability testing. This is something that comes to the forefront. It's something that we are heavily dependent upon to help to validate design direction or to make sure that the design is going to work before we roll it out to the world, contrary to popular belief in some places who believe you can just roll it out, and if it fails, you can just redesign it. But you can have so much detrimental brand impact if you do that, and you can waste a lot of money doing redesign. So again, I'll get on my soapbox there. We're going to pull back because we want to talk about emotional intelligence. So all of these things come to mind, and more, of course, when we think about UX. And I always like to share this illustration. Many of you have seen what I'm about to show you before, just maybe not in this manner. But when we think about UX, do you think of this? This is what UX is. I like to refer to these as the landscape of UX as a whole. I refer to this as the four pillars: heuristics and usability, information architecture, UX research, interface, and interaction design, and then all the little subcomponents associated with each. And then there's some that just don't necessarily fall under one. And then, yeah, there's a lot of overlap here and things of that nature. But I always like to share this because it illustrates how big UX really, really is. And it's not just those little things. Yeah, those things are included. Yeah, they are. But it's a lot bigger than that. The funny thing about it, though, is that UX is even about more than this. Yes, we have to do the work. Yes, we have deliverables. Yes, we have a lot of different things that we need to provide in order to support the work that we're doing, the designs that we're doing. Yes, there are tons of artifacts that we have to produce for our stakeholders, for our clients, to make sure that we can get the work done, to hand off to development teams. That, yeah, goes without saying, a lot of different things. We provide a lot of resources. Sometimes, for me, I'm a big proponent of making sure to provide educational resources for our stakeholders, because the UX maturity level is not just based on building the practice from a standpoint of the work that you do and the value you bring and things of that nature, but your UX maturity level is always going to be determined based on how well your stakeholders are engaging with you. If you want a strong or high UX maturity level, you must build your stakeholders and your internal clients. And for that reason, you need to provide resources. So for your team, for your stakeholders, things of that nature. So resources, is this a big part? Absolutely. No question. So UX is all these things, and all those three categories I just mentioned, they're splattered about on this illustration that you see before you. But folks, what about soft skills? A lot of people are so focused on doing the work that the sight of soft skills gets lost. And I want to be more specific. I want to talk to you. This is the purpose we're here today, to talk about emotional intelligence. How does this fit into what we're doing? And I don't think there's a better way to illustrate the importance of emotional intelligence by sharing some examples. But before we get into some examples, let's talk about what emotional intelligence really is. I'm currently doing a podcast on this right now, a more prolonged, more detail-oriented discussion and breaking it down. So if you want to hear a lot more detail, you can check out my current podcast series that I'm doing. And I talk about this model. Adele Lynn, my favorite author when it comes to emotional intelligence, presents 5 different foundational or key elements associated with emotional intelligence, so we know what it really is. The first aspect is self-awareness and self-control. And she defines it as the ability to fully understand oneself and to use that information to manage your own emotions productively. And I'd say it's not just emotions, but just to manage yourself as a whole, because emotions is a really broad spectrum of things. It's not just being happy or sad or things of that nature, but it's a lot of components that really help us to navigate who we are and how we operate. So self-awareness and self-control, huge. Number two, and this is one that I always talk about, how that some people hate the concept of empathy when it comes to UX. And I believe that that's because we're not agreeing on what empathy truly is. And I love her definition. It's that empathy is the ability to understand the perspectives of other people. So when we understand perspectives and we take those into consideration and we ascribe value to the perspectives of other people, it helps us to operate in a way that's more broadly supportive, if you will. So when we're doing our UX work, when we consider the perspectives of other people and we factor that into the work that we do, we deliver better solutions overall. So empathy, absolutely at the center of what goes on in UX and a key aspect of emotional intelligence. Number three here is social expertness, the ability to build genuine relationships and bonds in order to express caring, concern, and conflict in healthy ways. So it's really about holistic relationship building and management. And genuine, that's a key word that pops out for me, and bonds. People talk about the relationships, but it's good to build bonds with people that you engage with on a regular basis. That social expertness really helps to drive what you're doing, and it helps you to collaborate better. It helps you to partner better. It helps you to hear better. Empathy also, but considering the perspectives of others, you have to hear in order to really drive those things home in your own mindset, in your own psyche. And so that really helps you to succeed in what you're doing. Number four is personal influence. And this is the ability to positively lead and inspire other people as well as yourself. So you need to, people think about influencing others, but how about influencing yourself? And ethics comes into play here, because a lot of people, they love being a person of influence, but are you influencing people in the right way? Are you nudging people in the right direction? Are you doing it for the right reasons? So not just influencing people, but doing it in an ethical manner. And especially when it comes to the discipline at large, the things that you're influencing people to do, is it helping the discipline, or is it just helping you? Is it helping you to sell things, to sell your courses somewhere perhaps, or is it really helping to grow the discipline and helping to represent the discipline properly? So it's okay to be influential, but make sure you're doing it the right way and for the right reasons. Number five, mastery of purpose and vision at work. This is one that you don't usually see with a lot of other models. And she says that this is the ability to bring authenticity to your life and to live out your intentions and values. So really being committed, basically, and maintaining course, things of that nature. So these are all part of a Dell lens model, and it helps us to understand. But let's go a step further by looking at how emotional intelligence impacts us and the things that happen with us on a regular basis. Because I'm sure, yeah, we have questions, right? How does this fit? Okay, Darren, I get it. I understand what emotional intelligence is. I even knew a little bit about it before you started talking, but you say that emotional intelligence is important to UX. Help me to understand how and why. So, three scenarios. Scenario number one, I'm going to move through these relatively quickly. Persuasion and evangelism. I know some people don't like the concept of UX evangelism, but again, I think that's because of how we define it. So consider this scenario. Sam's company has been losing competitive advantage due to not having a suitable mobile experience for its clients. Good to be aware of that, right? To expedite the process, because they want to come up with a mobile experience. I think a lot of us have been there. Folks just want to roll something out so fast. They acquire a startup. They think this is a good way to go. So they acquire a startup that already has a solution that they need. All they need to do is improve it in order to be ready to present this to its user base. The stakeholders are in a hurry to get something out there, They're not really concerned about usability. They just want to get something out there. And the focus is on, they want Sam and the UX team, please just make it pretty. Just get it out there. We need to get something out there. We don't get something out. Yeah. Everybody's moving quick. Everybody's moving too fast, and everybody's all jittery, and everybody's out of sorts, and there's no focus on quality. Not a good thing. And as user experience professionals, it's our job to advocate for quality. It's our job to advocate for the users. And we also advocate for the business. We want to do what's best for the business as well. And so you're going to red flags and things like that in general. So this is where, look at how emotional intelligence can impact this. In addition to recognizing the need to assist, Sam also realizes this is a great opportunity to help to educate people about UX, not just what UX is, but also the value that it brings without adding any bloat to the timeline. Because a lot of people think that bringing UX into something will prolong your timeline to get things done. Actually, we can shorten it if it's done right and if you have the right people in place. And all the while, we want to make sure, Sam's going to make sure that the team provides value. So Sam and the UX team collaborate to evaluate the current application's usability. So very, very important. The results from a heuristic evaluation and application of the company's style guide to the newly acquired resource are presented to the team. The recognizing that need, having your head on a pivot, being sharp, all really critical and all part of emotional intelligence. The presentation begins with insights about the strategy that's applied to the effort, and it includes brief, capsulize, brief. Got to stress that because you can't be overly verbose and get the job done. And emotional intelligence will help you to navigate that as well. Brief, capsulized explanations of the reasons behind the design recommendations, which is something a lot of people don't understand. When we're giving recommendations, we need to validate what we're doing. We can't just say, let's go in this direction. We always need to be really ready to answer the question why and to support what we're doing with sound reasoning and data. If not, people think it's just your opinion and things aren't going to work. So from an emotional intelligence perspective, we should be anticipating that. We should be understanding that. We need to understand their perspective, but we also need to understand the perspectives of the users. We need to understand the perspectives of the people that are going to be rolling this thing out, actually doing the work, the development work. And when we factor all those things in, it really helps us to hum along. So that's scenario number one, really based on that, but that's scenario number one. Now, scenario number two. Kelly provides a user experience support for a major project where there's awareness among stakeholders of the need to redesign the organization's website. 3 members on the UX team, three members. 3 of the 5 stakeholders involved in this project have not been communicating with the team. They've also been holding separate meetings with the express purpose of redesigning the site's look and feel in hopes of gaining favor with executives. So sure, some of us have been there where you have this renegade crew, this maverick crew that's trying to basically competing with the UX team and trying to get something done and moving forward because they have an agenda or whatever might be going on. So Kelly's addressing this or experiencing this. Kelly has attempted to meet with the stakeholders several times, especially this group, but trying to get everybody together in an attempt to understand requirements for the initiative. But they've been in avoidance mode, especially the renegade folks. The designs are presented during a formal team meeting. And from a UX perspective, there's heavy cognitive load, meaning that people are having to think too much and work too hard to accomplish tasks in the experience. There's extremely confusing information architecture. Things are not labeled and grouped properly, really weird things, a lot of cognitive dissonance happening there. Problematic contrast, so there are accessibility issues, and there's a lot of dead ends when people go into different parts of the experience. There's no options, there's no related links, there's nothing. They go somewhere and they don't know what to do next. So very, very confusing. And the design is given to Kelly with orders to create wireframes and hand it off to the development team. And just so I can clarify, what Kelly is finding and the observations that are coming through are based on what those renegade stakeholders tried to drive. And so they tried to just do it, hand it off to Kelly, just do this. A lot of people in working UX today, especially new and aspiring UXers, don't understand that we're not order takers. It is our job to assess, come up with the best recommendations, validate it, and then go forward. When somebody thinks we're just order takers, they think that they can just tell us what to do and we just do it, which is part of the difference between the UX mindset and the UI mindset. In the world of UI, they were order takers. And so when you have a lot of people who come into UX from that arena and think that it's okay to just take orders, it's doing the discipline a great disservice. Well, in order to be ready to push back, EQ helps to inform us. It helps us to be sharper. So while Kelly's attempts to gain a greater understanding of the initiative have met a lot of resistance, Kelly has deferred to the need for collaboration. So through EQ, through emotional intelligence, these people won't comply. These people won't cooperate. So Kelly decides to go with the flow and then starts to drive more collaboration with these same avoidance-oriented stakeholders. So Kelly understands that the absence of requirements can be averted by translating the designs submitted by the rogue stakeholders. In other words, an attempt to confirm requirements can be gleaned from what was presented. So they wouldn't give Kelly requirements, but Kelly was able to look at the things they did and extract the requirements from those designs. And then just by asking questions, is this needed? Is this needed? Why is this here? What's the purpose of this? Things of that nature. Kelly then pushes back on pressure to provide immediate input because they want immediate input on what they gave, but we can't give immediate input. And a lot of people think that if you don't give immediate input, that you're doing the team a disservice for some reason. But we need time to analyze. We need time to, even if you can't do full UX research, you should be able to still assess what's there, even if it's just heuristically. You should be able to do that. But the name of the game here is navigating mentally and emotionally what's going on. So Kelly wants a few days to assess the direction and then submit formal feedback and recommendations where appropriate. Upon receipt of the presentation, to expedite the response time, Kelly partners with a UX team member to perform a task analysis on the current site, cross-reference with the proposed new design, and then conduct a heuristic analysis in conjunction with the proposed direction. And then lastly, Kelly conducts a meeting with all the stakeholders where efforts from the stakeholders are acknowledged and findings and recommendations are presented. Emotional intelligence helped Kelly to navigate this really difficult, potentially compromising situation, and compromising not in a good way. There's a time to compromise, but this was going to be bad, but Kelly was able to overcome this. The last scenario. In this one, I call this UX maturity or bust. A company learns about the importance of applying user-centered approaches to its products and services and adds a UX team to its ranks. Didn't have one prior to that. Stakeholders want to brand themselves quickly to the clients. We're user-centered. We're user-centered. This is our new battle cry. So an intensified effort to fill roles is launched. Again, they don't have a team. They need to hire. Yes, UX hiring is grossly dysfunctional. We won't get into that today because I can go on a tangent about that as well. But a lot of times people just want to fill roles. They don't necessarily fill them with the right people, but they just want to fill the roles. So after building a team of 5, a decision is made also to bring in a more senior UX professional to the team's ranks in hopes of helping the team to be more grounded and to give them better direction and better representation, even within the company. So the company hires Riley. And in addition to providing standard UX support, Riley is tasked to help drive efforts to continuously improve the company's UX maturity level. Now, over the course of the first year, the efforts of Riley, the team's senior UX pro, have been overlooked, been there before, trivialized, resisted, ignored, and discounted by stakeholders, all contrary to what they were trying to do with this whole initiative. Not because what Riley said is wrong or misguided, not because they despise or respect Riley. That's not what really people are doing. That's not, at least that's not what their intent was, but many are weighed down by and I think a lot of us have been here as well, we've always done it this way. Riley, why do we need to do this? So they're not meaning to be disrespectful or to discount, but it does come across that way, and it does feel like that way to Riley, which is why emotional intelligence is really critical, because you can't take what people do personally. There's a huge temptation to take it personally, but that's not the case. So, but then here's an addendum. I've given this talk before, and I thought I'd throw a little curveball in here. Riley is also resented by the UX team members. Now, this is the other feelings were not intentional. This is the team members, the other 5 that Riley joined. They recognize Riley's skill. They recognize Riley's acumen in UX, but they choose rather to engage in envying Riley instead of embracing Riley and understanding the benefits that Riley's bringing to the team. So now we've got some EQ deficiency on one side, and we've got EQ maturity on the other. And this can be extremely challenging. So this is what happens in this UX maturity robust scenario. Riley has continued to not only assess the position of the company's UX maturity level and opportunities for growth, but has also continued to evaluate the personal state. It's important to Riley has to look at self and not just continue to assess everything. This is where that self-awareness and self-control comes into play. From a company-based perspective, Riley realizes achieving various levels of UX maturity requires a great deal of patience, and there's going to be a ton of growing pains. We are not going to go from 0 to 60 in 5 seconds, so to speak. You're not going to achieve high levels of maturity, UX maturity levels quickly. It can't be done. From a personal perspective, Riley connects with other UX professionals to seek guidance to make sure the desired directions and goals are fitting, realistic, and appropriate. Because while Riley is a senior, the other 5 people on the team have more knowledge about the what's going on within the company. They have more domain knowledge. And so you have to rely on that, Riley does, in order to truly succeed. In an effort to optimize intrinsic benefits and healthy occupational mindsets, Riley establishes several resources for self and the team to drive commitments, to continued education, and to keep everyone's passions for UX sharp and focused. So back to resources again. Making sure to be sound, secure, and undeterred to fulfilling the task at hand, Riley establishes several communication and education resources throughout the company, slowly but surely achieving UX maturity milestones over time. And then also, lastly, recognizing the flaws in the team dynamics in hopes of generating more trust within the team, Riley also works to build genuine and inclusive relationships with the team members. So all of this, I constantly say, UX is not just about the work. And emotional intelligence helps us to navigate some of the challenges and the needs that arise. So let's go through a few closing snippets. I hope those examples help, and hope you can relate to them. Those are all real things that actually happened, that either I've experienced or other people have experienced. And emotional intelligence is the key to keep you from pulling your hair out, as well as driving success. But let's consider these closing snippets. Kevin Moore says that emotional intelligence, or EQ, some people call it EI, EQ, doesn't matter which one, allows us to better connect with the people around us in nurturing and productive ways. Can you understand the benefits of that? Can you gauge that? Can you understand that? It's really, really critical. Mia Northrup says that it takes emotional intelligence and on-the-job experience to recognize them. And by them, I mean problem interviewees during user research. So yes, EQ will help when you're conducting research, and then to respond appropriately to them. So a lot of people wouldn't think that if you want to be a better UX researcher, EQ will help you. This dude said, in the world of UX, there's nothing more counterproductive than the person who knows the methods, knows how to do the work, but lacks emotional intelligence, because you can have the best work, you can produce the best deliverables, the best artifacts, the best resources, not have EQ, And now you're not going to be able to deliver those things. You'll be limited to the desired impact because of the EQ. The EQ is the glue that holds those things together. Travis Bradbury, another noted emotional intelligence expert, makes a statement. Then this hits everybody on a personal level. People with higher EQ make an average of $29,000 more than those with low EQs. So yes, you want to make more money? I think your family would appreciate that. You would appreciate that. EQ is a major driver. So the higher your EQ, the more you'll make. Go figure. Kevin Moore again says, improving emotional intelligence can be done at any stage of life, regardless of intellect. So it's not about I lack this today. I don't have that. That's okay. No matter where you are, you can always build more emotional intelligence. And we continue to grow as UX professionals, and we can continue to build our own EQ levels as well. So you can start whenever, doesn't matter. And it's important to know and understand that. That's a part of EQ anyway. If you lack certain skills, certain acumen when it comes to UX, hey, you can develop it. It's no big deal. You haven't lost anything. You're not a bad person because of that. I like to throw in also, I just did an episode where I covered these in great detail, so I'm just going to touch on them quickly. Additional emotional intelligence traits beyond the 5 thing that Adele Lynn talks about. Curiosity, the more inquisitive, I like to say inquisitive sometimes too, but the more inquisitive you are, the more inquisitive we are, that's a part of emotional intelligence, to ask healthy, reasonable, realistic questions to drive a more understanding of things. Huge EQ trait that you only find it with emotionally intelligent people. Being an idealist, looking for the ideal, working toward understanding, identifying, and working toward the ideal situation. That's a part of emotional intelligence. And to do it realistically, which ties into pragmatism, or being very practical and realistic, understanding what is practical, understanding what is realistic, and working toward that. Not throwing up your hands because you feel like it's too hard. I hear people say, well, Darren, I hear you, but that's too hard. You're already giving in. That's not emotionally intelligent. You don't want to be the person that throws up the hands. You want to be the person that'll be persevering, the person that'll be realistic, and you'll continue to press forward. No matter, the obstacle doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that it's hard. What matters is that it needs to be done. So when you realize from that pragmatic perspective that something is needed, that it's ideal, you don't stop. You just continue to press in that direction. We also have to be adaptable. We have to be willing to shift and change and to pivot and to make how we're working fit into a given situation. Maybe what you're doing or the scenario you've been exposed to is not optimal for you, but you can still shift. You don't be rigid. Don't always be the same person. Be ready to shift and to move. Emotionally intelligent people can do that. We have to be resilient. The ability to get back up when things didn't go well, or when you get proverbially knocked down, knocked off your horse, get back up. So what? You fell down. You ever notice how babies, when they walk to people, that they fall down and they just get back up and they keep coming? They're so determined to come to you with your outstretched arms, that falling doesn't inhibit them. It doesn't deter them. It doesn't discourage them. It's when we become adults that we fall down and things don't go well, that we choose not to be resilient. EQ helps you to be more resilient. And so we want to make sure that we're that. Being friendly. What a novel idea. There's a lot of mean people in UX. I gotta say today, and a lot of people that are coming into UX that never qualify themselves to see whether or not this discipline is really for them. And mean UXers, that just doesn't cut it. Anyway, I'll get off of that because I'm running short on time. We need to be neutral. Neutrality is key. The ability to not pick sides, number one. And number two, you need to learn how to manage your biases. If you have bias issues, you need to become really, really good at identifying them and shutting them down. And so if you can't be neutral, then that's an issue. So, but the more emotionally intelligent you are, the more you can recognize, because you're self-aware, the more you can recognize your biases, and then you come up with ways to manage them so you can shut them down. Because if your bias find its way into something you're designing, then that solution is going to fall short. So not a good thing. That taps into perception. How perceptive are you? How aware are you? How well can you identify what's going on around you? How well can you read the room, as some people like to say? That's a part of EQ, another EQ trait. And then lastly here with this list is mental agility. The ability to shift and move on a dime is different than adaptability in that it has to do with the way that we think and how quickly we can shift and make decisions when it's needed, to do the right thing, to hold back, to restrain ourselves, even just to be quiet. Yeah, that's part of that mental agility, to be very, very agile and fluid and moving quickly and on a dime when it's absolutely necessary. There's also EQ red flags. Jealousy. If you're jealous, EQ problem. If you're in fear, that's an EQ problem. All these are remedied. These don't mean that you're done. These don't mean you can never be emotionally intelligent. These don't mean that you can't be repaired, so to speak. These are just things that they're red flags that if you see them in yourself, you know you need EQ work. If you see them in somebody else, you know you need to apply more EQ to manage that situation. Detrimental ambition. People who are willing to get ahead at the expense of others. Denial. You see something, it's beyond a shadow of a doubt. It is what it is, and people still will just not believe something, even though the evidence is right there in front of them. Not a good play. That's an emotional intelligence red flag. To deflect. You've done something wrong. You've fallen short. You could have done a better job at something, and someone brings it to your attention and even tell you how to fix it. And instead of accepting that and owning what happened, people just decide to look at what's going on with somebody else and deflect what happened because they don't like the way that that's making them feel. Um, not good. You don't deflect. Own what's going on. Be self-aware. Exercise self-control, and move forward. Don't deflect it. Arrogance. People who have confidence and there's no justifiable reason for it whatsoever. I've heard people say, just tell people they just need to be confident even when they're not confident. Well, you're manufacturing confidence, and that's really arrogance. It's presumption. So you don't want to be confident for absolutely no reason, no justifiable reason. And then even if you are confident and the reason is justified, you still need to be humble. So that still becomes arrogant. So trolling, something really common when it comes into the social media world, where people they inflict pain just for the sake of inflicting pain, where they are contrary just for the sake of being contrary. They ask a certain question just because they want to be somebody who's ruffling the feathers or rocking the boat, and not because it really brings any value. Trolling is an act of an emotionally intelligent, defunct, or deficient person. So that's something you don't want to troll. If you have a question, be genuine about it. If you have an issue, be genuine about it, and be willing to allow somebody to respond appropriately. And then don't be those people who ask a question, then when they get the answer, you run off and never say anything again. That's also an act of trolling. People with inferiority complexes. Just because somebody else has done something well, done something good, that doesn't mean that you're bad. There's no reason to feel bad about yourself because somebody else is excelling at all. They're doing well and they're being exemplary. They've done the work. Respect them and appreciate it for it. And if you see something that you need to develop in, then fine, then do that. But inferiority complexes, not an EQ trait. It is a red flag. And then lastly, any aspect of incivility, treating people improperly, is a sign that there's an emotional intelligence issue. So I'm over time a bit here. So if you want to achieve emotional intelligence, make sure you know and control yourself. Understand and support other people. Make sure you're building genuine relationships. Engage in leading and inspiring others, but do it the right way. And then master your path. So I'm just taking the 5 things that Adele Lynn said and sort of shorthanding them a little bit. Master your path. And when you take the time to do that, takes time, then you're going to make some good impact. So in wrapping up, remember, UX is about people. It's not about the wireframes and the research and all that. It's about people, essentially. It's about people. And so without emotional intelligence, we won't improve our personal UX maturity level. We can't navigate UX spaces successfully. We'll fail to bring optimal value. We'll be overrun by UX posers and retrofits, and the discipline can and will become trivialized. So EQ is really at the core. It's something that should help us if we trust it, if we pursue it, if we embrace it. We can experience that. I've got some, this deck will be available later for anybody who wants it. And these all references all came from when I first delivered this talk in 2017. I especially love the last one to see what if those things actually came to pass. So worth taking a look at, but some good information there in the references. I've got several books here that some people might want to take a screenshot of that now. Some really good books out there about EQ. The ones with the stars are my favorites. I highly recommend those. I recommend all of these, but those stand out even more than others. And so where can you find me? The World of UX with Darren Hood, my podcast. I'm on Twitter as Darren Hood and UX Uncensored. Most people find me out on LinkedIn. That's an old LinkedIn screenshot, so apologize for the timeliness on that. The UX Chit Chat Hour takes place every fourth Thursday, although it'll be the third Thursday because of the holiday in America. So we're doing it next week, where we meet and talk with UX folks from all over the world for roughly an hour and 15 minutes just to have some conversations. I'm on Instagram now. I've got a YouTube channel. I'm writing on Medium. All over the place. We even have a new comic strip called Tales from the End to Script that's out there, and talk about time to produce a new episode, though, a new issue. But this is where you can find me, folks. I am readily available, so by all means, feel free and reach out. And I hope you got a lot out of this conversation. Emotional intelligence is critical to what we do, and it can make us a lot better at what we do. So that's it.
Dan, thank you so much. Absolutely awesome as always. So much knowledge bombs being dropped. Um, we've got some questions for you. So the
Yes.
first one is from Christopher. Hi Dan, we recently debated the difference between personas and archetypes. Aside from application, what would you say is the main difference between them? I'm thinking of how to add qualitative understanding of the user to representations we present to business.
I've heard artifacts, the phrase artifacts mentioned a few times over the course of my career. Most recently, it's popped up a lot more. Without me deep diving to explain the difference between the two, I'd have to deep dive to give you a more complete answer. So I'm going to give you my short answer for now, and I'll probably dive into it a little bit more because I want to be able to answer that question more expertly. You see how I'm demonstrating emotional intelligence as we speak. What I will say is this, though. Don't split hairs. It's the game is, what is the goal of the artifact and what's the goal of the persona? And when you think about what you're trying to accomplish with the work that you're doing, because I'd venture to say that the purposes of each, there's either not a difference between the two or there's not much of a difference between the two. So trying to have a distinction really is not going to, we don't want to split hairs, because splitting hairs doesn't render any benefits. It doesn't. If somebody came in, without me even deep diving it, if somebody came in, probably because I've been doing this so long, if somebody came in and said that they had an artifact, I could come in with a persona and accomplish the same exact thing. And if that is the case, there is no difference. The question is, who's driving that car? You can put two people, you can put a teenager behind the wheel of a Mercedes-Benz, and you can put a 55-year-old CEO behind the wheel of a Mercedes-Benz, and then you can get in any car, and all three of you are driving down the street. And I guarantee you that the person who is driving The average person who's driving the more expensive vehicle is going to drive in a more responsible way. And you're going to have less of a problem driving on the same track with these people. So it's, we talk a lot about different deliverables and different things, methods and things that we do in UX, and we don't talk a lot about who's behind it. So it is what it is. I mean, a butter knife is a butter knife. One person uses it to spread butter on toast, and another person is using it to screw in trying to assemble furniture. I mean, it's a tool is a tool is a tool is a tool, and an artifact is an artifact is an artifact. Because artifact has that word has more than one meaning, by the way. So don't get caught up in that. It's what do you need? That's UX strategy. What kind of work are we trying to do? What tool do we have in the box? If you think there's a difference and an artifact works for you, then fine. More power to you. I'm not gonna make a huge difference because if I was doing the work, I wouldn't really care, frankly.
Thank you.
Yep.
We've got a few more questions. So the
yeah.
next one is: Do you teach any courses that are available to us in South Africa?
Not currently. Notice that. Not currently. I have some things in the works. I've been talking with Chegg. I don't know how many are familiar with Chegg. I've been talking with Chegg. Chegg actually approached me and asked me to roll out some learning materials. So I would love to do it. I've talked to Skillshare before. I've talked about rolling out my own site where you could actually go through I've designed multiple UX courses. I'm just not in a position to roll them out. Time. I just need the time to frame it in a way where it can be deployed. So we have a private social media network called Engage, and there's a component of that allows me to deploy courses within it. I have yet to do that. So I've got several resources. I just don't have the time. So it's in the meantime, however, I have been planning, and this is more likely to happen first. I've been planning on rolling out. I just started something called the UX Tip of the Week last week. The first one came out, and it's more of a Q&A thing. Somebody asked me. It has to be quick because it all shows on one thing. And so I'm starting to roll those out. There's going to be some little 3 to 5 minute segments that I'm going to start rolling out on the YouTube channel that speaks to, again, some of it is Q&A oriented. Some of it is, here's a challenge that comes up when we're doing the work. How do we manage that challenge? So those will be in those little 3 to 5 minute things. That'll probably be followed by some full-blown lessons on UX, which I think is, again, I feel a sense of indebtedness. The discipline's been good to me. I've been fortunate to have a lot of fantastic experiences and have a lot of great educational experiences as well as work experiences. So I want to give back. And these people who charge for this stuff sort of bug me a bit. So, you should be able to just get it. And some of the people that are charging and some of the people that are doing this stuff, a lot of the people, I don't know if anybody saw my talk recently on UX misinformation. There's a lot of bad information out here. And it's harder to unlearn something than it is to learn something. So when you get your hands on somebody trying to teach you something and they have 5 years of UX experience or 3 years, some people with 1 or 2, trying to teach people about UX, that's terrible. And it's going to burn you. It's going to burn you. It's going to burn your users. It's going to burn the company you work for. It's going to burn your team. And nobody needs to rebound from all that stuff. So I'm looking at these different things, and I hope to start having more on the YouTube channel. It'll probably be the first place where things hit broadly. But the UX tips, I'll probably produce. I'm actually on vacation right now, but the staycation. But you'll see another tip more than likely by tomorrow on LinkedIn. So if you want to see any of this stuff, LinkedIn has turned into my central location. And there's a World of UX page on LinkedIn, and I'm thinking about using that as a conduit as well. Because usually I just tell people another podcast is out. I'm thinking about doing a lot more than that. So we'll see.
Keep
So it's
it.
coming.
So I guess the answer is keep an eye on the space. Um,
Yes. A Dune fan.
so we've got the next question is from Lorato, and hi Dan, are you familiar with UX theater? If so, how do you think it harms the product, or more so the UX designer themselves?
I'm a little familiar with UX theater, which really is about, in general, my understanding is that it's about going through the motions of doing UX work and appearing to be practicing UX in a proper way when really all it is putting on a show. There's nothing substantive that's really being done. This is happening. Keep in mind, the whole mindset of UX theater or the concept is that it's directly related to this fake it till you make it that people are actually teaching people to do. Oh, you don't know how to do it? Just fake it till you make it. That's not ethical. It doesn't bring value. A lot of stakeholders, a lot of people don't still understand what UX is, which is why people are getting away with UX theater. They're getting away with fake it till you make it and all these other things. And then they do what I call buzzword slinging. You have people, I've been in presentations before where I've given a presentation at work and I'll say cognitive load or mental models. And within the next 3 minutes, a stakeholder is saying cognitive load or mental models, and they don't know what it is. I'm not doing UX theater, but you are. You just jumped into it. So people grab buzzwords and then they think, people go, oh, when you use that buzzword, they get they're starstruck. And no, UX theater is highly detrimental because it doesn't represent the discipline. It doesn't bring value. It's just putting on a song and a dance. It's putting on a front. It's no, be genuine. Notice that word kept coming up in the talk. Be genuine. Be real. And if you don't know something, hey, like I just said, somebody asked me, I don't really know, but this is what I have to say about it. I'm going to dig. I'm going to fill the gap. If I see a gap, I'm going to fill it. People who are given in the UX theater are not being genuine about the discipline, and they're also letting you know, they're saying through their behaviors that they don't care that what they do detrimentally impacts the discipline. That is also unethical. And now you go force me to get on LinkedIn and talk about you when I see what you do. Because I'm going to let the people know, you know, they have, here's a really crude example, but I'm going to give it anyway. I don't know if they do this in South Africa, but in the States, if there's a person who has been convicted of a sexually related crime, they have to register as a sex offender. And then you can actually go into the sex offender registry and see if anybody on your street, in fact, I think you can sign up for a notice. If somebody's a sex offender, moves on your block, you can get notices. Now, to me, it's the same thing. These people are offenders. They're offending the discipline. They're creating problems. You need to know, hey, somebody that's talking garbage about UX just moved on your block. You need to know about this so you're not paying attention to it. So we're bringing this to people's attention. They decided to talk. When I was coming up in UX, I did my first site in 95. I started doing UX part-time in 2002 during my day job as a very small percentage, which kept increasing. Then I finally got my first full-time UX job in 2005. I didn't start talking like this until 2012, 2013. So I was quiet for 8 years. Some of these people, yeah, blah, 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 blah. You know, I mean, like 5 minutes after they finish doing something, and you don't even, I go to events sometime where, or like it's like a group meetup and people who know nothing, a fraction of what I know, will talk over me. They will cut me off and talk over me. I was quiet for 8 years. If you take my whole career, my whole UX career into consideration, I was quiet from 95 to 2012. That's 17 years of quiet.
Sure.
And these people, blah, 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 blah. How can you, I have met Jacob Nielsen. I have met Alan Cooper. I've met a lot of these stalwarts in the UX world. And when I was in the same room with them, I wasn't eager to talk. So these people are talking. There are people on Instagram claiming to be mentors. They literally have 3 months of experience. You can't mentor with three. You can't mentor with 2 or 3. Truth be told, and I know ADP lists. I'm known for not being a fan of ADP lists because they're not vetting out a lot of the resources. You want to be a mentor? They don't vet you out. You just come in and be a mentor. If I had a mentoring service and you had 3 years, I wouldn't let you mentor. You need to get going because years don't mean anything. I'm getting on soapboxes now. Years don't mean anything. I've been doing it for 26 years. Somebody else been doing it for 5. Somebody else doing it for 8. Somebody else been doing it for 6. What have you been doing over that time? It's not about the years. What have you been doing and where have you been doing? Because it's 6 years of what? I can show you 5 people, all with 7 years of UX experience. I guarantee you their experience is across the board. And one person might stand out. It depends on where they worked. Not just that you have 6 years. So, and a lot of people are very willing to misrepresent who they are in UX today, which creates a problem for those of us who want to learn something, because some of the people who are talking have nothing to share. And they're not going to tell you that because they're not emotionally intelligent. They're willing to lie. I've had the stack of resumes. I've been a hiring manager and try to get through the stack of resumes, and half of them, more than half, 3/4, people lie about who they are. That's not good for the discipline. So really long answer, but yeah, it's no UX theater. It's hurting us bad. And the stakeholders know that it's bad, but they're not going to tell you because they don't know how to express it. But they'll get rid of your whole UX team though in a heartbeat. So,
then keeping it real.
I'll try to be shorter with my answers. Sorry.
No, it's cool. It's cool. I mean, no one's complaining. The next question is quite a lengthy one. Dan, do you have any resources, thoughts, feelings on how we can build personal development of EQ in the design role? We have a global leadership development model and a global technique competency model. But I think injecting growing EQ into those models can help close the gap and create a different kind of impact to our clients.
Yes.
I asked this question before you shared the EQ traits. Perhaps they can be broken down and measured as opposed to just felt.
Yeah, and it's ironically, I have a short answer for this one. I think it's direct and to the point. I don't have the URL handy, but if you go to Mind Tools, matter of fact, I just shared a link on LinkedIn earlier this week about, matter of fact, I've delivered this talk before. And when I deliver this talk live, there's a segment where I have people go to the Mind Tools website. And the link that I shared is the one that was in the talk, where you go there and it's like a 15 question self-evaluation that lets you know, you can gauge where you are, and it gives you a score. It generates a score, an EQ score for you as an individual. That site also provides several resources on how you can develop EQ. So like in my talk, I said, you can still do it. It doesn't matter when you start, when you focus on it. And that site is a gold mine. So if you go to mindtools.com and just do a search on emotional intelligence, you'll end up seeing the resources that show you, here's a list of things you can do to build your EQ. I think every UX professional today, up and coming UX professional, needs to embrace EQ, which is really sad. Here's another soapbox. Because you know what else is taking over EQ? People who think they have imposter syndrome. I'm seeing a lot more people working in UX that claim they have imposter syndrome, but if you ask them to explain what imposter syndrome is and what its history is, they can't tell you. Why are you embracing something that didn't exist in 1932? from a standpoint, because if imposter syndrome was really a thing, wouldn't it have pre-existed a lot of things that we do? Wouldn't somebody have had this problem in 1723? Wouldn't you have seen signs of it? Instead you see self-doubt. Self-doubt's real. Lack of confidence is real. Growing pains are real when you're starting to do something, when you're new. That's standard. But imposter syndrome, if you check the history of it, is not really legit. And so people hide behind it. And here's the thing that really shows where EQ comes into play. I guarantee you that if you excel at EQ, you won't have an imposter syndrome mindset. I guarantee you that, because you're going to be so self-aware and you're going to be so quick and willing to identify gaps between you and where you want to be as a professional, and you'll commit to filling those gaps. You don't have time to claim to be an imposter. That's a cop-out for a lot of people. So seek out the resources to help you become emotionally intelligent. The books that I provided, fantastic books. In fact, one of them is an emotional, I don't know if anybody got the screenshot. One of them is called the Emotional Intelligence Workbook. So that book has stuff in it that you can do as well. And then you just commit to it. Commit to it, because you got to be. And then you know what else will happen? You'll draw more towards the other emotionally intelligent people. And because none of us can get anywhere by ourselves, we need other people, other sharp people in our lives. Years ago, they came up with the concept of sharpening the saw. And a knife can't sharpen itself. A saw can't sharpen itself. An axe can't sharpen itself. It needs another piece of metal. And then you do that, and then both of them are sharper. And that's what happens when we come together and we're both committed to excellence. When we walk away from one another, we're sharper. When you're, I have a metaphor I always talk about. I call it the plastic knife scenario, where you try to take a real knife and take a plastic knife, and you do that, that plastic knife is going to leave cut up. And it can cut bologna, it can cut lunch meat, the plastic knife can. It can cut pizza, but it can't be used to sharpen. It's limited. And so we have a lot of plastic knives out here who think that they can do stuff because they think that they have Dunning-Kruger. They're suffering from Dunning-Kruger mindset. They have more confidence in themselves than they should. You cut that bologna, so you thought you were great. You cut the salami, you thought you were great. You cut the cheese, you were able to slice some cheese, you thought you were great. But then when you came in contact with something heavy duty, you got cut up. And then instead of realizing that you're not as great as you thought you were, you decided to throw the real axe or saw or knife under the bus. So that incivility is actually a manifestation of emotional intelligence issues. That's it. So the resources are there. Go get them.
That answers the question, Gusva. We've got one last question.
Okay.
Can we co-develop a Hippocratic oath for designers?
It's funny you should mention that. I have a potential talk on tap that I'm about to do. It's actually potentially going to be delivered for the folks at, I'll tell you, for, what do they call it? The folks in the UK. I think you folks do something with them sometimes. Why am I forgetting the name of it? Tech Circus.
Okay.
Tech Circus
Yes.
Yeah. I have a proposal on the table. And so I'm just waiting because I know they're doing a lot of live stuff now. But it's called UX and the Good Doctor. And it takes the actual Hippocratic oath that doctors have to take and it refactors it for UX. So be on the lookout for that. And I might end up delivering it earlier than that. I finally started delivering talks multiple times. Today's talk was modified for you folks. It was updated because I first delivered it in 2017. This is the third or fourth time I've delivered this talk. So even if I do that for them later, it's not like you won't see it beforehand. So look at the Hippocratic Oath. I can't cite it off the top of my head, but I did notice in looking at it that a lot of the things in the Hippocratic Oath, it does apply to us, and it can be parallel for UX. And ethics and UX get separated, and that's part of the reason that we're in the state that we're in now as practitioners, because ethics has continued to get further and further away from what we consider to be UX best practices. This discipline is dependent on ethics. I mean, nobody has to listen to you because you're the UX person and you came in the room. We have to earn trust. So one of the best ways to earn trust is to be ethical. And because people have to learn to trust you. They have to learn to trust your recommendations. They have to learn to trust that you're partnering with them, because a lot of folks coming into UX don't realize this, but a lot of people that you interact with as a UX professional see us as a risk. They see us as a roadblock. They see us as a hindrance. They don't see us as partners. So you have to earn that by partnering, by demonstrating, by, hey, we did some research and we found this out. And you, instead of fighting with people, we to learn how to collaborate with people. That takes EQ. You're not going to become this great collaborator without having EQ in place. You're not going to be a great facilitator of a focus group or of UX research, as mentioned during the talk. Without EQ, you're not going to get there. And everybody's not a natural facilitator. Some people want to be. That's what's hot. The big hotness today is UX research. I want to be a UX researcher. They don't even know what it takes. I did a whole series on that on my podcast. Do you know how many times I've seen people, especially during this age of democratizing UX? And now anybody can do it. Everybody's a designer. Everybody's not a designer. If everybody's a designer, nobody's a designer. If everything's in bold, nothing's in bold. It's the same concept. Science is art plus, or design is art plus science. And now people who all they bring to the table is art, which is a subjective medium, into an arena that's relying on science to get things done. I love how Roxana beautifully talked about various scientific elements that come into play with accomplishing UX goals. How in the world is somebody who's been sitting over there doing nothing going to design something successful? You need art plus science. Everybody's not a designer. Everybody can't do research. And the one thing that I found the most consistent is when somebody who's not a researcher or somebody who's new to research is facilitating a session with a participant, and they don't answer your question fast enough, or they don't give you the answer that you wanted, they have a very hard time not making suggestions, not correcting the participant, not making the participant feel stupid because they don't understand what it takes to do the work. Ask the question, ask them, give them a task, sit back and zip it. And when you're tempted to go, no, you shouldn't click there, just say that in your head, but keep poker face. And you're thinking to yourself, ooh, that was terrible. But you don't have to say it. That ruins everything. Now your data is shot. And now, because your data is shot, and because you ran your mouth during 5 participant sessions, and you bring that data that's all tainted, it's moldy, basically, it's cognitively moldy, and you bring that back to stakeholders, and they realize that it's flawed, you just lost an opportunity to build trust. Takes EQ to shut your lip, to zip it.
Yeah. I mean, so lots to take in, lots to, I guess, go through. But EQ is definitely a common theme. And it's either you've got it or you actually need to acquire it.
Yeah. And you can acquire it. You know, some people can. A lot of people can. but it takes work. You don't just roll up in here and become a UX person. That's not
Yeah.
how it works. My eyes are tearing here. Sorry. Yeah,
No, no, it's all good.
yeah. You gotta build this thing in you. And oh, here's drop another bomb. Yeah, UX offenders. that's great, Iggy. Yeah, I just saw that in the chat. The boot
Yeah, and then
camps.
someone said, I think.
Was
No,
that?
no, I was going to say. I think someone said. I think it was Laden that said, someone should acquire that domain quickly. That's definitely a good idea. You've sparked something, Darren.
Yeah. And these boot camps, I
Um,
know it's more of a stateside thing than a South Africa. Because I
mm,
heard that the boot camps in South Africa are actually different. I was actually supposed to come and do a boot camp in South Africa. I was supposed to come to Johannesburg once, and I was afraid to get the shots. I didn't come, so we got to try to work on that. But
yeah,
so I can come over. But in the U.S. boot camp and in Europe, the UX boot camps are terrible. They were unethical from the beginning, and it even gets worse. Matter of fact, people like me get labeled as a what do they call us? Gatekeepers. When I'm actually about to do a series on that, and I'll probably do a talk on that as well. Anybody ever done study on what a gatekeeper really is? A gatekeeper is actually a good thing. It's all we do is advocate for quality. So I don't apologize for that. I'm a gatekeeper. Yeah. Not the way that they say. I'm not trying to keep anybody out of UX. I'm not trying to keep from hiring people. I'm not trying to do any of those things that they claim. And ironically, a lot of boot camp folks, I'm talking about the teachers and the people behind the boot camps, are the ones that were spreading this stuff. And so people who don't understand and are quick to just believe whatever they hear, and they're in that anchoring bias. The first thing you hear, so you think it's accurate, and you never really validate it or check it out. Now that's another source of misinformation. Gatekeeping is good. If there was no gatekeeping, that hat that's on Iggy's head wouldn't fit like that. That's part of what it's standards. Your ATM card. You know that if it wasn't for the ISO organization, your ATM card wouldn't be the size it is.
Yeah.
That's like one of the number one, the top, if not the top gatekeeping organization in the world. And so they have all these standards because we need standards in order to support and foster quality. So gatekeeping is about quality advocacy. It's not about keeping anybody out of anything. Ironically, the same people that accuse people like me of being gatekeepers and stopping people, they stopped me from getting manager jobs. They stopped me from getting interviewed for UX jobs. People claim, oh, it's so hard to get your first job. Newsflash, you'll have a hard time finding the right UX job your entire career. It doesn't change. It doesn't matter how long you've been doing UX, and especially as bad as the UX maturity levels are. So yeah, gatekeeping, not what they thought it was. So the boot camps they don't educate people. They promise people nobody can promise you a job. They promise you jobs. They promise how much money you're going to make. They do all this stuff. Then they tell you, go tell everybody you're a freelancer. You're not a freelancer unless you actually have clients. I mean, you can advertise yourself as doing that, but eventually there's, I've seen those people, they lie a lot. They lie. Oh, I've been doing consulting now for 9 months. Oh, how many? Oh, really? How many projects have you worked on? Well, none. Oh, then you haven't done any consulting yet. So stop telling me that. I actually have people who tell me that they're interested in a job, and as soon as I see that they're willing to misrepresent who they are, they're gone. If you're willing to lie to get into the job, you'll lie when you have the job.
Yeah.
So I have no time for you. I have no time for you at all. Now, when you go and learn to stop lying, let's start there. Now you're on the road to success because again, back to ethics. Ethics is a part of UX, and if you're a liar, you're not ethical at its most simplest form. If you don't know anything, I don't have any UX experience, all I have is school projects, say that. Don't act like you've been doing something you haven't done. Don't act like you're somebody you're not. That's not a good thing. And that's
Well,
EQ.
speaking about lying and also the Hippocratic oath, it segues, I guess, into this last question, and this is by Amta. What are your thoughts on introducing licenses or a board of practice in the UX field, just like our doctors and architects have?
There's been a lot of talk about this. Um, it's wow. It's going to be really difficult to do. Um, there's two schools of thought in general. One is you don't need the certifications. You just need to demonstrate an ethical educational path. Just like you can, because we talk about certifying doctors, certifying lawyers, they have to go through certain processes. But are we really doctors or lawyers? Are we really on that same level? Is part of the thing I'm starting to consider, that I'm not sure if the certifications have a lot of validation, because these people, nobody agrees on anything.
Yeah.
And people disagree for the wrong reasons. They disagree for selfish reasons as well. So in order for there to be a certification, the reason why you have a bar exam and the reason why you have physician certification exams is because the leaders in those disciplines came to a point of agreement. They've also been around since God knows how long. So I wonder how long it took them to get to the point where they could agree on what a certification should consist of.
Mm.
So what we do have in the meantime is we have education. Now, educational paths, where there are not certifications, you do have education. And so education should serve as the solution for now. It's going to be years. I'll be dead and gone probably by the time they come up with UX certifications, because of what it takes to act. People say it. It's easy for us to say anything. All you have to do is think of something. If your vocal cords are working, it'll come out of your mouth. There's a big difference between saying something and bringing it to pass. And we have to emotional intelligence, because we have to be pragmatic. How can we realistically come up with this practical solution? And it's not going to happen quickly. So now we go to education. Now, so if education then becomes a pinnacle element, there's another set of problems there, because education itself is it's an institution. And a lot of people who engage in education are not committed to and don't respect the institution, which is why you have all the UX boot camps, which is why you have the Google certification, which is absolutely worthless. Hey, if anybody on the call went through that or was thinking about it, keep your money in your pocket. You can do better going through books. I'd hire a person who was self-taught in books, or maybe had a membership through the Interaction Design Foundation, which is starting to fall off the horse now too a little bit, because they're starting to chase the buck. But they still are the keepers of a lot of great information that's still out there, and they have the most affordable educational set of resources available there. But it has become tainted in the last couple of years or so, but you don't find anything cheaper. You could just go into the encyclopedia of HCI they have and just study that. And I've got several book lists out there. You can grab some books. If you can dive into those books and you're a good self-starter, you can learn a whole lot. I'd hire you faster than somebody. I personally, I'm not interested in hiring anybody from a boot camp, because they're just so, they've been infected. Really, they've been infected. I mean, I got to say this, because I don't think this part is going to be the video that goes out. So I'm going to say this for you folks. This is for your eyes only. Last week, before I went on vacation, I shared that we're hiring for an entry-level person at my job, at my place of employment. Why did I, along with that post, why did I say, ping me if you're interested? Why did I say that, Iggy? You should see
Well,
all of the messages I got, excuse me, about people pinging me because they're interested in this entry-level UX job. And that's fine. I'm the one that said ping me. That's my fault that I got my inbox on LinkedIn flooded. Ping me was so I would know who was interested, and then I can put you in the referral system, which will help you get seen, at least get evaluate quicker than somebody who's not in the referral system. So that's part of the reason I did that. I didn't do it to start all of these weird conversations that, and I could tell the people who went to the boot camps have been told that when you can get hired, just get in their face and ask them questions because you want to stand out. I actually had somebody ask me, what can I do to stand out from all the other applicants? I'm like, well, number one, and I thought this to myself, how unrealistic is that? Do you realize how many applicants there are? Do you really think I really think I could stand? I can't stand out amongst 500 applicants. Are you insane? That's not doable. But they've been taught, these boot camp people have been taught, you got to do something to stand out, and you got to have a conversation because they'll remember you. I'm not going to remember you. You know how many people I talk to in a week? I'm not going to remember you. I don't remember people's names sometimes when I've known them for 20 years, and I can see them. Hey, I see them every day. And what's your name again? And then we laugh. It happens. That's the frailty of the human brain. But it's no. How silly is that? So the education, you got the people who get educated at the boot camps, which really isn't education. You could have done the same. You could have kept your $8,000 to $25,000 in your pocket. I'm on record saying this all the time, and just buy books and study them, and then really digest it. You'll be so much further along, and you're richer because you didn't give your money to some snake oil salesman that basically took advantage of your zeal to get you to cough up the money when you could have gotten a lot more substance for a whole lot less. I give what boot camps give. I give more. People have told us, some of us that are in this little circle that do what I do, that they get more from interacting with us than they ever got. These people went to boot camps and said that they get more from us than they got from the boot camp. Wow. And we're doing it for free. The people in my circles that are doing this stuff, we're not charging anybody for anything. We don't charge to be on Engage, that social media network. I don't charge for the information that I give. I talk to people all the time. They schedule time with me. I look at their portfolio. We need to do it live. We look at your portfolio. Now I'm going to rip it to shreds. Now, if you wear your feelings on your sleeve, you don't want to talk to me. And I'm not trying to be mean. I'm passionate. And so passion comes across as anger for some reason. He sure was mean. No, I'm passionate. And you know what? I'm passionate when I see something I do too. So why do you take everything personally? Not emotionally intelligent, right? Get right back into the talk. You're taking things personally. And I got news for you. Even when somebody says something and it is wrong, the way they did it, can you separate what they said from their poor delivery? Yeah. That's an act of emotional intelligence, because it could be that what they said is gold. And now you're going to throw away the gold because you didn't like the box it came in? Really? Isn't that silly? Mm-hmm. And literally, if somebody gave you a box of gold, but it was all wrapped up in aluminum foil, you say, I do not like that package. Somebody could give you a prettier box with nothing in it. Would you just embrace the box? Really? So be engaged more. Critical thinking is another byproduct of emotional intelligence. And a lot of people getting into UX are void of critical thinking. So you're not going to go far. So education, wherever you get education, should always enhance your level of critical thinking. In the new school, I just started teaching at the school there. See, I just did it again. I teach there, and all of a sudden I forgot the name of the school. But at Hillsbury, I was going up back to my brother. I'm so involved in helping I'm teaching a design tools and processes course right now. I do so much to help them to engage in critical thinking, because that's the thing that's going to stick to their cognitive ribs, if you will, way down the line, and help them be the better professional. not just having them go through and do some template oriented work and not really take any critical thinking away from it. So, Google, garbage, boot camps, garbage. Some of these Udemy courses, we call them MOOCs, massively open online courses. The vast majority of the UX courses on the Coursera's and the Udemy's of the world are garbage. They're really there to make a buck off of you. A lot of them, frankly. I heard David Travis has a course. I would endorse him because he's going to do the real deal. And I think his course is on Udemy. I just found out about it. Again, I'm thinking about rolling out some courses, but I have to be real careful about how I do it if I do, because it's just a different animal when you're delivering a course like that. But universities, some of the university courses aren't good. I went to DePaul once, and they tell you on their website for their Masters of UX equivalent Masters of UX program, they say you need to become a unicorn to be good at UX.
Wow.
Who in the world? Where'd they get that from?
Yeah.
That's a lie. It's a lie. Some people will say, well, you need to be able to code so you can speak their language. I've been doing this for 26 years. I used to be a freelance web designer, so there was a time that I used to do HTML and CSS and all that stuff. That's not what helped me to speak to developers. I did it because of EQ. I respected them. I understood things from their perspective. I trust them. You're an expert. I trust the QA person. I trust the project manager. I trust the product owner. I trust everybody in their lane. They are experts. I trust them. I don't need to know what they are to do. I need to study a Scrum Master to be able to interact with a Scrum Master? Or can I just respect them? So emotional intelligence affords me those things, not knowing what they do. So you don't have to code. And coding has nothing to do with UX. You saw the big illustration I showed. Coding isn't listed. It's irrelevant. I'm not coding anything. I'm too busy trying to keep up with all that stuff. And UX is an infinite science, and coding is a finite science. How in the world are you going to blend those two? Not to mention the fact that the discipline associated with coding requires a different persona that's doing the work. My brain works differently than a person doing code does. Their brain works differently than mine. We have to find a medium ground to communicate, but I don't need to do your work and you don't need to do mine.
Yeah.
So more misinformation that we're trying to help people navigate through. It's sad. It's sad, but education is not all it's cracked up to be, but that's all we have right now that we can depend on other than, it's just not going to cut it when it comes to the certifications. We're a ways off. And I have 2 certifications from Nielsen Norman Group, just to get back on certification, the ones that do exist. They've never done anything for it. They've never afforded me anything. I paid through the nose to get them, and I didn't need to. They don't let you test out, whereas Human Factors International does. I actually wish I had done that.
Yeah.
And of all the certifications I've seen, the only one that is acceptable where some people actually want it is the certification from Human Factors International, and they let you test out.
Yeah.
You don't have to take their courses. Whereas Nielsen Norman Group, you got to go to all their courses, even if you don't need them. You got to go to all their courses. And I've been to those courses now. I really don't need that. That stuff's available in books. I don't need to sit in your class to get that. So I appreciate what Human Factors does. And I've seen them be more of ironically, be set more for the defense of the discipline than anybody else. And there's other certifications out there. I've seen practice tests for some of the other places. Garbage. Matter of fact, one company, here's another, this is gonna blow your mind. Probably some be shocked, but I'm just being completely transparent, sharing whatever. This other organization, I can't remember the name of it, but I believe they're based in Europe. and they were sponsoring something this week where they said, it was on LinkedIn, and they said, hey, we got the ladies of that UX, love ladies at UX, but there's a lot of strange things that happen with them from time to time across, and they're everywhere, but I've seen a lot of strange things happen. And this is another one where we're bringing together all these people that don't agree to talk about UX. Come on out, and we're going to talk about it. And I was tagged in the post. Did you talk to me about this before you decided to tag me in the post? That's not emotionally intelligent, because I'm not going to. Do we all have to agree about every single solitary thing associated with UX? Actually, no, we don't. I'm not a fan of design thinking, but I mean, design thinking is defined in so many different ways and executed. Forget the definition; it's executed in so many different ways. And for some people, it takes the place of UX. So that's problematic because all it is crowdsourcing design. I call it glorified spitballing. It's not a good thing. But I know of instances where design thinking can be executed. They call it design thinking, and it's not really design thinking. It's really UX, and they're calling it design thinking. But in the minds of the people that work there, design thinking is done and it executes success. It fosters success. So I've seen design sprints, which I didn't want to talk about earlier, where it's a complete sheer and utter joke. But I've seen, and Google's wrong for having introduced that to the world the way they did. However, there's ways to do it that work. So we don't have to agree on every little intricate little thing. But at the same time, I'm not going to blindly celebrate differences. Number one, because if we don't agree the same thing, I at least want to understand you so I can respect it. Because if you're gonna blindly suggest that I do X, Y, and Z, I can't support you in that. And I'm surely not going to debate. It's like debating is like, I guarantee you, I've got 26 years. I guarantee you a bunch of the people who are at the forefront of that conversation have like 2 or 3 years. And we're in the age where the kids are telling the parents, so to speak, pardon the metaphor. Some people get offended by that. And I didn't say pardon it because I'm asking you to put on your seatbelt and take it because it's real. So you got to accept it. That it's like the kids are telling the parents what to do. And that doesn't work anywhere in life. I said this on LinkedIn once. If you take advice from a person, not that you can't say anything good, kids can say something good sometimes, but as a normal course of everyday life, if kids were that sharp, kids could take political office at 7, and you know that's not doable. Their brain, you know that the human brain cannot even be trusted to make decisions. It's not mature enough to make decisions until you're about 21 years old. So if that's the case, an underdeveloped brain doesn't have the capacity to fully do certain things. And you'll find an exception here and there. If you're a UXer, you know not to rely on an outlier. Yeah. If you want to have viable actions, data-driven actions, you need to throw the outlier out. So the fact that 1 or 2 people seem to be sharp don't mean that the rest of the people in that same class are. Throw it out. And it's just sad. Would you let a kid, I said this on LinkedIn, would you let a kid write your diet? If you did, you'd be eating ice cream and cookies for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. These kids don't have a concept. They don't have a concept of economics. They don't have a concept of nutrition. They don't have a concept of time management. They certainly don't have emotional intelligence. So how in the world can you then rely on that? So when you take that and parallel it, why are people who've been in UX for 0, 1, 2, and 3 years? Some of the articles that are written about UX are written by non-UXers, but then we get out there, we listen to them. I'm not listening to them, but people like me in my arena are listening to it. Why are we letting people that don't know about UX tell us how to run UX? So these things all play a critical part, and education, back to the main thing, certification, most of it worthless. If you decide to get a certification, be careful. I'm not going to debate, which is what I was trying to get at. I don't debate at all. If the sky is blue, and that's it. If the sky is blue, why am I going to sit down and talk to you for 2 hours to debate about whether or not the sky is blue? It's blue on a clear day. The sky is blue. Even at night, it's blue. People don't realize that. The night is still blue. The sun just stopped shining. And so that's why if you do photography, if you do a long exposure, the sky becomes, you end up seeing things that you can't see with the naked eye, because we don't see things in a time elapse, from a time elapse perspective. So if the sky is still blue at 2 a.m., but when the sun comes up and the light, I mean, when you're in the dark, you wake up in the middle of the night to go to the restroom, the lights are out. After about 15 seconds, you can see. You notice that? But you can't see colors in the room. Even though you can see enough to maneuver and make your way to the restroom without stubbing your toe. But we can't see the colors in the room. So if there are clothes hanging up or furniture, we can see it, but you don't, in the dark, in pitch dark, you don't see color. As soon as the light comes on, you see all the colors. People don't catch that. The colors are still what they are. You know, the dresser is still brown. Your gym shoes are still white or red or whatever color they are. Your hat is still multicolored when the lights are out, but you can't see it because the light is out.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Truth is truth. I'm not going to debate at all. That's a sign of emotionally intelligent, defunct individual. When you're willing to debate about that which is not debatable. And people who are unqualified like to debate because it gives them a venue. It gives them a place for their voice to be heard. And it also demonstrates that they have no interest whatsoever in whatever the truth is. They just want to be big dog. And that's an EQ red flag.
Yeah.
And they tagged me. I'm not coming to your event. So I'm glad that LinkedIn has the ability to untag yourself. Don't come looking for me. I'm not. And some people will also tag me and tag people that I don't engage with in UX. There's people I avoid in UX because somebody took one of my posts, rearranged the words, and tried to make it look like I said something that I did. He literally did that.
Wow.
Tried to make it look like I say something I didn't say. I'm not going to say who the person is because some of you probably like the guy. And I'm not going to out him. And so he rearranged it, tried to make it look like I was against people. He's supposed to be a seasoned UX person. He uses the phrase gatekeeper like it's a real deal, which shows he hasn't done the work. To see, I've done the research. I'm waiting to finish my research before I talk about it. But gatekeeping isn't what people make it out to be. So I reached out to the person. Hey, you said this, this, and this. That's not right. That's not accurate. He ghosted me. I reached out to him 3 or 4 times. He ghosted me.
Wow.
So, but he knew that by saying what he said about me, he was going to be able to sell more of his classes. That's why he didn't want to talk to me. He wasn't interested in a real conversation. Trolls never are.
No.
EQ red flag. EQ red flag.
EQ red flags. Darren dropping knowledge bombs. It's going out of season.
Yeah. Somebody got mad that somebody designed a class for IDF. Something went wrong between this one person at IDF. The person got mad about what IDF did with their materials and then went out telling people what IDF did. And basically it was like sicking the dog on somebody. Get them. IDF did it. I don't like it. All 20,000 of y'all, go get them. EQ red flag. EQ red flag. That's what organized crime people do. You put a hit. You put a social media hit on somebody. Really?
Social media hit. I'm learning all these new things. Social media, it's UX offenders.
It's crazy. It's
Yeah.
crazy the stuff that's happening, but it's, I'm glad that I know, and I'm known for saying that I'd rather have the knife in my back than in my hand.
Hmm.
I can rebound. If somebody stabs me in the back, I can rebound through EQ. But if you're a perpetrator, most people don't usually come to grips with the fact that they are. So,
Yeah.
if anybody is ever, you want to know something another resource off the beaten path, if you go to YouTube and look up Dr. Ramani, she does all this stuff about narcissism, because narcissism is not on my list of EQ red flags, but it's part of incivility. So in my deeper talk, in my series that I'm doing right now about EQ on my podcast, I talk about narcissism. And I'm going to be talking about sociopathic behavior. So all of those are part of the incivility red flags. Dr. Ramani is awesome. She is an absolute gold mine. And a lot of what she's talking about, sometimes it sounds like she's talking about relationships, and then she'll bring in the professional aspect of it. So it is highly relatable. Her stuff is just great. It's great. In fact, she's doing a workshop on Saturday. I'm thinking about plunking down to $50. That I will pay for, because she's that good. And now I'm recording podcast sessions, so I can't go. But she's dynamite. She's absolute dynamite.
I'm definitely going to look into it. I've done a search now. Looks very interesting.
Yep. You can't be a narcissist and be emotionally intelligent. You can't.
Christopher just said now he's done the EQ quiz. Super informative.
Yes, nice, isn't it?
Quiz.
It only takes, like, of that mind tools piece, it takes all of about like 5 minutes, I think. If I remember, it doesn't take much long at all. There are some more extensive ones, but to get a high level view, it's a good starting point. It starts that journey, and when you start paying attention to things, you're on an EQ track. A lot of people that are not, they just don't pay attention. They deflect. They're willing to turn a blinded eye to something. That's a bad way to go. I made a comment recently. I was telling somebody about something we need to do to excel at UX, and the person said, "Oh, but Darren," I mentioned it in my talk during the talk. Darren, that's hard. And I gave him another metaphor. I'm full of metaphors. And I said, I remember when I got interviewed once, and that's where I got the metaphor from. I used it for the first time. When you come up to a mountain, 5 people walk up to a mountain. All 5 people see the mountain differently. And the way that you see the mountain is a reflection of how your EQ is, the level of EQ. Some people see the mountain and they say, maybe I can drill through it, because it's impeding everybody's journey. I wonder if there's a way to go around it, another person says. Another person says, maybe I can climb it. It's big, but it looks like it's doable, and I've done it before. Maybe I can climb it. Another person comes up with another off the beaten path type of solution, but then the 5th person says, man, this mountain sure is big. And that's it. They only see the mountain as an obstacle. They don't see it as something that needs to be overcome. So when I was in the interview and the person asked me, what has been the biggest obstacle you've encountered recently? And I actually got upset. I did when that happened in the interview. And I said, well, I don't see things as obstacles anymore. And I realized, okay, I'm not going to get this job because they've got this inexperienced person. I could read the person like that. That's another thing too. The more EQ you get, the easier it is to read people, which is a blessing and a curse, because some people wish they didn't know certain things that they find out about folks.
Yeah.
But I can like read somebody like in 30 seconds now. I don't even have to meet you. We just be on LinkedIn. And I can read you in 30 seconds. And I realized that this person that was interviewing me didn't have any interviewing experience, didn't have much experience in UX at all.
Wow.
didn't know how to relate to somebody who had as much experience as I did. And so I knew I was toast. And I knew that the person hated my answer, because that's the stuff you ask people that are new, and you expect some grandiose answer about the obstacles that they face. I said, I don't see things as an obstacle anymore. It's a mountain, and I need to understand what's the best. I need to assess the mountain and whether or not I need to climb over it, drill through it, or go around it. I need to
Yeah.
assess that. Because it's not, I don't care how big it is, I'm getting to the other side of this mountain one way or another. But what's
It's
the most,
method.
what is it made of? Is it good for grabbing? Can I climb it?
Yeah.
I need to assess it. I need to evaluate it. So I don't see, and years ago I did see it as an obstacle. I don't see it that way anymore. So people are actually being, here's a shocker for some of you. When you reach my level of experience, you will actually get discriminated depending upon the UX maturity level and the skill of the interviewer. You will actually be discriminated against for reasons that you never would have thought during the interview process.
Wow.
So, because that resulted in discrimination. I interviewed with Facebook. That was a nightmare. Just the interview process alone was a nightmare. And they have all these inexperienced people who interview you. It's awful. It's awful. They can't relate to half of what you're saying. and they say in that for a researcher role, they wanted me to come up with a scenario, a fake scenario, and then talk about how I would approach it. Why, with all my experience, why would I need to talk about a fake scenario when I could just easily just talk to you about one that actually happened?
Yeah.
That subjects you to discrimination. So now I'm competing with someone else's imagination. I'm not competing based on my experience. I'm competing with their imagination. So that's not EQ. That's not an EQ way to do interviews. So I was glad I didn't get it, because it was like, I'm going through it. I'm like, this is bad. This is really bad. They had a marketing, the interviews where somebody who's not a part of the team, it works. Sometimes it doesn't. Where one of the people that interviews you interview 5 people, 3 of them are UX people, one of them is a developer, and another person is God knows what. And they had a person from another department that did a lot of metrics and stuff, and not it wasn't like a UX analytics person. It was like some weird marketing metric stuff. And I'm like, okay, this is toast, because they're asking me questions about what they do in their job. I don't do your work and don't care. And it's not, why are you asking me about that? And of course I didn't get it, but I'm glad I didn't, because it was dysfunctional.
Wow.
Facebook and all these, here's another bad thing. And if any of you are doing it, please stop. When you put your Facebook or your LinkedIn profile, and you'll say X Facebook, X Amazon, who cares? Please stop putting that stuff in your profile. It's like, man, this is the pinnacle. No, it's not. It's dysfunctional mumbo jumbo. It's garbage. You can do it just because you went to Facebook doesn't mean that all you have to do is use Facebook to realize that they have terrible user experiences. So now you're saying that you work there? They roll terrible things out all the time. I guess they did research on that too. Or is it this person who's in the interview who's been doing UX for 3 minutes, who now can say when they leave, they can say that they're ex-Facebook, even though they didn't really qualify for the job in the first place? Don't do things like that. Not EQ. It's not EQ friendly. And then people like me, who are profitably anal, are going to be more likely to interview you later when I see that. Nope. If you lie, if you try to make a former job that you had a superstar situation, elevator not going to the top floor. No. You got to have courage to do this too. It takes courage. Ooh, the mountain is big. Do you have courage or not?
Wow.
Have courage. Have courage. And there's a lot of cowards in UX. That's why a lot of people are afraid of me. Or they run from, they see my posts and they run. on LinkedIn or Twitter or wherever they encounter me. Or I did a talk on the trouble with UX education. That's another one I'll refer you to. It's out on YouTube now. That talk is out there. And one person wrote a rebuttal. They recorded a rebuttal. And I think I know the person. And the person that did that, I had to block them because they started behaving like a troll.
Wow.
So the only reason that they posted this, what they said was a rebuttal in response to there's no problem with UX education. I was in education before I was in the UX. I'm getting my PhD in education. I didn't talk about that during my intro. I'm about to start my dissertation. So you've got, again, you can listen to the kid. You know how much UX experience that person has? Zero experience. You know how much education experience that person has as an educator? Zero. You know how much experience I have as a UX professional? Well, 26 years. You know how much experience I have as an educator? I started educating people formally in 1983. So I'm older than I look. I just told my age a little bit. I started educating people. Yeah. On top of the fact, I've got 5 instructional design certifications. 5 of them. 5 instructional design certifications. Been educating people since 1983. Spoken in crowds as large as 4,500. Delivering talks. Deliver talks all over the world on a regular basis. Successful podcaster. Have a grad cert in educational technology from Michigan State University. Not bragging, citing facts to make a point. Getting my PhD in educational leadership. And somebody who has nothing records a rebuttal. You gonna listen to the kid or you gonna listen to the experienced person? You want the gold or the pyrite? Which one do you want? In my misinformation talk, I talked about the difference between gold and pyrite. And some people, it looks good, but it's not. It's fool's gold. Which one do you want? I mean, really? And then he named it a certain way so that it would get traction in the searches. So if you search for UX Uncensored, you're going to see his thing. He's trying to get that, but nobody liked what he posted. It's ridiculous. He's just mouthing off because he can. That's the problem with social media, that anybody can post something and nobody can stop you.
Wow.
So it takes critical thinking to make your way through it and get to the right stuff. Else you end up with a chest full of fool's gold. So I'll stop there.
I'm definitely going to check it out. I want to see what this UX Uncensored post is about. I just made a note of it. Darren, I mean, it's always a pleasure having you. It's absolutely awesome. The amount of information and knowledge that you share. And I think sessions like this, the informal session, it's just highly enjoyable,
Yes,
where we're just speaking off the cuff and you're just dropping bombs after bombs after bombs. I mean, we appreciate it, and I'm going to take the opportunities to speak on behalf of the community. I think, we appreciate the fact that you're just speaking freely. Sometimes you need the honesty more than often, and you just don't get it.
You just made me think. Can I mention one more thing that I think some people probably you wouldn't get this in listening to me. I almost walked away from UX in 2007, 2008. And it was because I kept encountering things that I didn't expect, such as the things you heard in the scenarios. I wasn't as emotionally intelligent at the time. And when I would encounter a lot of the pushing back and a lot of the frustrations because people make you think that UX is all candy and rainbows and unicorns over here, that everything is fine and you never have any issues. This is a very volatile arena. I love how Dr. Nick Fine said, and I keep quoting him on this, it's a toxic discipline. The work isn't toxic. It's the dynamics within the discipline, excuse me, that are toxic. I didn't know that. It was like that back then too. I didn't know that, and it floored me, Iggy. So I was like ready to walk away. I would go back to instructional design, which is where I came from. This is crazy. How can you do all this research? You know that what you did is right, and they're just going to blow you off? I don't get it. Why? And I had experienced that when I was in sales before. You give the best presentation, convince the person that this is what they need for their business. I was a soft seller. I didn't believe in tricking people and all that stuff. And then they still buy the wrong one. They still buy something because it's cheaper, or, and that was frustrating to me. So I'm going back down that road, and I didn't like it. And my boss had a conversation with me, and he talked to me about healthy conflict. I actually left the company. And but they said if you ever want to come back, they loved me. You want to come back, please just let us know. Reach out to us. I went to the other place, and after 2 weeks, I'm like, this is crazy. And we had a conversation. I said, oh, yeah, let's start that. I'd like to come back. He said, but you need to understand. He said, I'd love to have you back, but you need to understand that there is such a thing as healthy conflict. And that stuck to my ribs. That was the first time anybody just told me some blatant truth that helped me to manage some of the mental and emotional hardships that I was experiencing during my earlier years in full-time UX work. And when I saw, wow, okay, I can see that. All conflict is not bad. And if somebody disagrees, that's okay. We can talk about that. And that actually, unbeknownst to me, that's what started taking me down the path of seeing how emotional design and UX meet. And I would not be here on this talk delivering this talk for you today if not for that conversation.
Wow.
At that time. And I talk people out of walking away from UX from time to time because people experience these things. And that's why I do what I do. Anybody can talk about how you do the work, and there's no shortage of that. But to teach people how to navigate everything and to show you how to excel in UX as a whole, because if you don't learn what I'm telling you, you're going to come face to face with it and you won't be prepared. And you'll either become a political UXer, as I come across, the people who are willing to compromise and bite your tongue and be an order taker and not really take a stand for the discipline, and because you're just happy, you just want your check and you don't care. Or are you going to be courageous and step out here on the water, sort of walk on water, so to speak? You can. And I'm going to show you how to do that. That's what I do. In addition to showing you how to do the work and showing you which work is the best work to use, I'm going to show people more of the strategic things. That's I believe the first talk I actually delivered in South Africa was my UX strategies masterclass that I did. That's on YouTube. You can find that out there. So yeah, that's what helped me. And so I like giving back to that. And because you learn how to do the work, you end up being cursed with that group where all you do is talk about the work, or people sensationalize the work, or people rebrand the work and you fall for it. Yeah. Oh, and I just saw something in the chat too. MOOC is MOOC. And that's what they call it. Yeah, massively open online course, just so everybody knows. But anyway, I just thought I'd share that just to encourage somebody. If you ever get frustrated by UX, just EQ will bring you through it. It will.
Yeah.
It'll bring you through it.
Yeah. And thank you so much. This
Absolutely.
has been invaluable, priceless, absolutely priceless.